Welcome to the Lila Life Show. I'm your host, Linda Andrews, and you've tuned in to the right place to up-level in your life and business. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Lila Life Show. I'm your host, Linda Andrews, and I am excited to bring you today's episode, which is a tip from the Learning Corner. And this episode is entitled Freedom with Food. Before we dive in, I want to speak for a moment about the podcast and the evolution of the podcast and what we have going on right now. So, as I mentioned, today's episode is Tips from the Learning Corner. We also have Conscious Conversations, Transformations in Consciousness, and our Coaches Spotlight. So, there's differences in these episodes, and we have no order right now to when each of them will be produced. Right now, it's Tips from the Learning Corner. Last week was Conscious Conversations. And with time, we will get our cadence down, but we're in the experiment of not a cadence and what flows organically. So, I do want to give you a frame of what you can expect in each of these episode types. In the Tips from the Learning Corner, it's going to be myself or one of our other coaches spotlighting some tools that we think will help you on your journey. When you listen to a conscious conversation, like I said, this is me, another coach discussing, or me with a special guest talking about a topic and unpacking that for the episode. And then the other episode title, Transformation in Consciousness. This is a conversation with myself, one of our coaches, or one of our clients sharing the evolution, the journey, whether it's through self coaching, a coaching practice, or specific parts of the transformation in their life. I hope you enjoy these different types of episodes. We would love feedback. We would love to hear what topics are most supportive for you. And again, today we're going to dive into freedom with food. So, although I have landed currently at present as CEO, founder of Lila Life, and a intuitive life and business coach, there's a lot of different experiences I had prior to this moment, which, if we ever have a cup of coffee or whatever, I would love to talk about with you. But for right now, I want to focus on the food piece and my experience with food, my evolution with food, and my hope is that this lands. Some people may have been experiencing in the pandemic some very just unhealthy patterns that have shown up and come up during this time. And I think with that can be an opportunity for healing. So you're going to get over the course of our time together today some of my favorite tips, tools, what I say to my clients a lot of the time if we're working through some of these issues. And it's going to be fun. So sit in, relax. If you're driving, pay attention. And I invite you to take a few deep breaths to root into this moment and to consider for a moment your relationship with food. Noticing what shows up for you, noticing if there's tension, anxiety, excitement, anticipation. My dad always likes to say it's one of the great pleasures in life is food and eating. And probably that's one of the things that has evolved me to be such a foodie. I used to have a dream of being a food critic when I was younger, like young. Like I don't think I fully knew what that was. And I actually am pretty active on the Google reviews. Um, and the last thing I'll say about like food desires was that yeah, there was lots of food. Food was celebration. Food was um, a treat. Food held connection, right? These are some things I've come to learn as I've gathered through my journey and looked back into time. So I want to start first. When I was a teenager in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I had like a secret going on, and well, a couple, but one of them was I had this feeling in my throat every time I swallowed, it hurt, and I didn't tell anyone. And I was really scared, bear with me not to be too graphic, but I had horrendous gas, which was truly embarrassing. And I felt sick a lot without knowing I felt sick because I thought that was normal. Okay. The other secret was I felt like I had an eating disorder without having an eating disorder. So what do I mean by that? I was a collegiate or high school and then collegiate swimmer, um, training a ton, right? 20, 30 hours a week of swimming, fitness, working out, all the things. And I guess it's funny now because I can see there's quite a component of maybe what you call over exercise, but I wasn't binging, I wasn't restricting, but I was obsessed with food. I started buying diet books and I never thought any of this was weird. I just felt very normal and, society, right? It was like Atkins and whatever the hot diets were then. This is actually so funny. In high school, I was buying keto strips from GNC because somewhere along the way I found out about ketosis and I was like, oh, that's a secret. If I can get myself in ketosis, like I'll be, I'll be, I'll be skinny, right? And um I got those strips and, like, you're peeing on the pee strips and that you test your pH and you can see if you're in ketosis, and I was like, "I'm not in ketosis, and this seems impossible." And then you fast forward to college, right? I'm in college, I'm in the dining hall. Our athletics program did not have a special dining hall, and, to be frank, the food was shit. And what do I mean by that? A lot of processed food, not a lot of veggies, like, thinking about this now, it's truly appalling, especially for a high performance athlete, that that's what we were eating, and, I think maybe college athletics can be a breeding ground for, eating disorders. Our swim team, the men's team got cut, about after freshman year, so it was, a ladies only team, and, but we didn't all talk about it, right? I had a friend that had her struggles, but aside from that, there wasn't a lot of people talking about it, and it felt um, like no one had it, right? Like, oh, they're just performing, they're in shape, and they don't have any issues, but I do, right? And it was like this like shame bubble. Eventually, it got pretty bad. When I said the eating disorder, that wasn't an eating disorder. It became an eating disorder. So I was bulimic and also in the throes of major binge drinking and loved to be drunk because it was easier to puke. And that was my life for several years. And I remember the first day that I threw up feeling like, oh my God, uh, thank goodness I knew I had an eating disorder. And then probably shortly after started getting some support. Boyfriend at the time, he had a family friend that specialized with this, and he had me tell her first, and then eventually I told my parents, and really started getting the support. Okay, let's talk about the support. The support at the time, now this is mid 2000s, and at the time, our athletic department, I kind of like helped them create like a beta program of you'd see the doctor, you would see the psychiatrist, you would see the nutritionist, and you would see the therapist. The therapist was private pay, or your own insurance, and the others were through the university, two with the athletic department, one with just the school. And they may or may not have been in a ton of contact with each other. Um, I imagine there was some crossover, especially with the physician and the nutritionist. And it was everybody was saying different things. It was like, okay, here, have your Prozac or your Lexapro, that had its own repercussions, especially with the drinking. Okay, count your count your I forget what it was, but it wasn't your macros, but it was something like you need to count it was like these ticks, like one sugar, two carbs, one this. It was like kind of so obsessive. That was the nutritionist at the time. Um, and so forth. So, okay, fast forward, I get out of college, I'm done with my sport, I had an injury, I'm navigating all this, and now it's like, let's dive into fitness. And for me, that was really intense. It was CrossFit doubles, it was 2, 3 hours of training. And I remember thinking, okay, well, I was doing 25 hours a week of training. So, now I'm not an athlete, but I I got to do at least 10 to 20, like, right. So I'm like trying to literally do that. And now I'm starting to work. And it was really crazy. It was very hard to navigate. Hang with me because I want to give this context to freedom with food and now some of these lessons. But this is important framework of, really challenging teenage years around food, college where, I was in the throes of the eating disorder, now being done with athletics after pretty much actually was a decade of high performance athletics. And now I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to just throw myself into food. And I was seeing a weight loss coach at the time. I'm living in Jersey and I'm obsessed with CrossFit. I would have, a boyfriend measure my body fat like a lot, like a journal about body fat. I mean, it was crazy. And I was so disconnected and so disembodied from myself, from my being, from my body. And there was so much chaos in my mind, including the alcohol, just distraction, everything really not helping in that. And, there's more to this story and the transformation. We could do a transformation and consciousness conversation around this. But eventually, all of this led me to food. And I won a paleo competition back in the 2000s. I won 500 bucks, CrossFit Hoboken. I actually had started a food blog, and that was probably the beginning of me getting really into cooking, which was really fun. And I, yeah, I was like putting chicken in my purse. I was eating a ton of protein. I was also making myself very sick. At this point in time, I was not bulimic anymore, but definitely had major disordered eating patterns. And the chicken thing, if anybody's into CrossFit, I was like, now you could maybe call it like the count your macros fad, but I was, um, really into paleo and really eating a lot of meat. And I started getting this nerve pain. And I know that the CrossFit was a big part of this and contributing to the inflammation, but also the types of food that I was eating. This was like the Stop and Shop special up in New Jersey. And anyway, so now this fitness stuff is really coming to a head. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm like very unhealthy right now. So then I'm in this finance career, moved back to Florida, um, definitely starting to make the shifts. That was a big change for me, was moving back to Florida, stepping out of some of these patterns. I wasn't measuring my body fat anymore. I literally to this day haven't weighed myself. Um, and it was like untethering some of these very toxic behaviors that were debilitating. And I came down to Florida working in finance, got this really great promotion working in management. And about halfway through that, I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. Went back to the sales side in wealth management. And I took advantage of this very special window in my life. And this window was 1 month. I was able to take basically a leave, and I was in the Bahamas for a month doing my yoga teacher training. And this is where I first could see all of the food issues. So I'm living on an ashram in a tent. It wasn't like a pup tent. It was like a tent with a bed. So it was a little bougie. I guess you'd call it glamping now. But it was 8 different of these tents on a platform. And we were up every day, 5:30, on our meditation mats by 6, enjoying satsang, which if you're, religious, kind of like a church service, and then eventually went to yoga practice, and satsang was at night again, and we ended the day at 10, and that was every day. There was a lot of stuff filled in between. I think we got an hour of free time. And although it was busy, it was physically gentle. The Shivananda practice is 12 yoga postures over 90 minutes. So for my yogis out there, that is like not a lot of movement in 90 minutes. You start with basically 15 minutes of breath work. You go to 60 minutes of movement in a 60-minute shavasana, corpse pose. A truly beautiful practice. And those 12 postures, if you're connected to breath, to self, you have an ability to really get in deep and to really feel your body. So I'm doing that practice twice a day, doing this massive amounts of breath work and meditation. And we get to eat there twice a day, and not only twice a day, but also um, it's vegetarian. And up to this point, I was gluten free. When I told you about my throat hurting and all that, I started seeing a functional nutritionist and I started learning that I had some food allergies and major, major stress affecting my hormones and the way that I was processing food. And that's when I started getting into some functional labs and starting to understand what was going on more of a physical physiology level with my body. Okay, we're at yoga. We're doing this yoga practice. I'm freaking out because I can only eat 2 meals a day. As this paleo food packer, I was used to eating about 5 times a day. I was like addicted to food in the sense that it was this distraction. It was something I could control. I could put my focus to it. And I was like, "Oh my God." And it was so funny, nothing's by accident. I sit with this so much, right? Like how the perfection of life, even these challenges, these moments. But we had to do karma yoga, which is an hour basically of volunteering while we were at our yoga teacher training. And during karma yoga, I got paired with the Ayurvedic center, which, my dream is always to have a well-being center. And I was the volunteer for one. It was amazing. And this part of this volunteer hours was about basically was just doing data entry, but I was like immersed in that. And I got to see what the intake forms look like, and I got to see what Ayurveda was, and I got to be with the head of the Ayurveda center, Lalita, and I remember I won the paleo challenge and I had that blog. I told her, I am going to record, Instagram, either Instagram or blog. I'm gonna let everyone know what every day on my journey at Shivananda and the ashram is and really like tell the world. And she says there's some things that aren't for people to know. There's like that's the mic drop. And, you know, God, that rings true so much. And certainly with the advent of social media these days. But she said that to me and she said, "This is for you. This is for you." And I think this is really interesting because of how much social media can steal life because this is for you, right? And social media can make it like an open display of everything to everyone. But remember, this is for you. So I had packed myself for this trip like 33 or 32 or probably 35, whatever the number was, of these like heavy, they were so yummy, protein bars. So I could like survive the day. And then our 2 meals a day, which were these unlimited vegetarian, like delicious buffets. And then there was a little store on site that you could buy snacks if you needed to. Needless to say, I survived the month. And in that time, I was like, oh my gosh, I use food as a distraction. I use food like very different ways than I think I want to use food. So I started exploring this within myself. Also, at my time at Shivananda, I was introduced to permaculture. And at this time, started really getting into soil and farming and just understanding where food comes from. Um, Really interesting because I ended that teacher training I want to get my dates right, in January of 2015. And somehow, some way, I was directed to go to culinary school in New York, to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. And this was, like I said, in New York, and it was a plant-based culinary institute. This has later been acquired by CIA, I believe. Okay, we're going to get to the culinary story, but I wanted to share with you simultaneous to my yoga teacher training, I was getting my first coaching certification, and it was in health coaching. And it's through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. So that past July, right, I decide I don't want to do finance, but I'm going to stick it out for the year or management. And then in July, I start this digital program called Institute for Integrative Nutrition. And then in January is that yoga teacher training. So I'm going through parts of this simultaneously. And oh my gosh, IIN, this was a life changing experience. I had always thought about going to school for nutrition or naturopathy and had visited Bastyr University and just it was like I wanted to get to the bottom of this. It started with an eating disorder, right? And high level athletics, but it's like, what's the deal with food? And I started to become on this quest of like, I need to know. And at IIN, a few things that really helped me. One of them, it sounds so basic, but add more greens to your life. The other is um, bio individuality. Like what I need to eat at this moment is different than what you need to eat at this moment. And that is going to change over time. And I think you can see people get super fixed. I was like this into what they need and a rigidity to that, and not being able to really tune in and check in with the body and what the body needs. So different things, seeds are being planted during this time at IIN. I've started to really wake up to big pharma, big ag, corruption, uh, how corrupt and how dysfunctional our farming systems are. And I don't mean the farmers necessarily. I just mean that this industrial agriculture, it's like, oh my gosh, is there an integrity to what we are consuming? And, these are some of the principles of permaculture working in harmony with our land and just so much beauty coming to me during this time. I was taking farming lessons. This is a story for another time, but I just like wanted to learn. And again, mentioned I went to culinary school. So that July, I went to New York. I was still working in finance, but I was working remote. And I would fly back to Florida once a month to check in with the office, but I was working remote for this year. And it was awesome because I was on a school schedule and I was able to have the traditional holiday break. So I'd just be in the office, for 2, 3 weeks over, say, December and January. My boyfriend, now husband, and I got to really connect during that time. And it was just so beautiful being back in the Northeast where there had been so much toxicity in my life, eating disorder, over alcohol, and to go back and to tap into a meditation practice, shout out to mindful, uh, just getting into myself in a way that it's not like ego selfishness, it's just like connection. And this culinary experience, now I'm starting to shift fully to plant-based and gluten-free. It was just like so much healing. And what do I learn in health coaching? I learn about sourcing. What do I learn about in yoga and the permaculture? Sourcing. What do I learn about in culinary school? Sourcing. Where does your food come from? And you walk into a grocery store and see processed food and such a limitation on even types of veggies you can get, let alone organics, let alone local, right? And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And seeing some of the dysfunction in the food industry, hospitality, and seeing how so many restaurants keep people, not like they're bad, but just keep people disconnected from their food and to themselves, right? And I'm learning about the energetics of food and the energy put into creating the food. It was so, so, so illuminating. Not to mention such an amazing time, a highlight year of my life for sure. Shout out NGI, CTP 255. Um, anyway, sourcing. Okay, sourcing, making your food with love, right? The energy that you're creating your food with, the reverence for every single step. Who's preparing the food, right? The chefs, maybe yourself. And again, where is the food coming from? So I started shopping a lot at the farmers markets and that year ends, I come back to Florida. I'm still working in finance. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm still working in finance. But I did for another 2.5 years as I was still navigating and finding my way. And I started Farm Fridays. So at one of our local farms, like once a month, I would bring friends, bring people in the community out to a somewhat local farm. We would leave my house at 6:30. We'd get to the farm about 7:15. We would harvest or support them for an hour and we get back in the road and come back home and I'd be in the office by 9:30. every Friday, and it was really weird and amazing all at the same time. And so we talk about sourcing, but we cannot talk about sourcing without talking about soil. If you know me and don't know how much I love soil, you don't know me. I love soil. I don't know. I just first of all, my dad like loves dirt and loves walking around barefoot, so I think there was a natural inclination to that. But understanding, wow, like this is what our food is coming from. We must make sure that this is as nutrient dense, as nourishing as possible. And for those of you following climate change, if you're following it close enough, you're seeing how our soils have been completely stripped of their nutrients as a byproduct of so many activities. And not only that, legislation changing that made the criteria to be organic a lot easier, a lot of integrity lost there. And last but not least, the role of pesticides, chemicals, and you can say big ag, but it's really big pharma if you're following that. Okay, so I'm talking about soil, I'm talking about farming, and I'm talking about this eye-opening experience through health coaching, yoga, and a shout out to the meditation practice, but also culinary school. And I think that for you, if you've struggled with food, the number one thing that changed my life and my relationship with food was asking the question, where is this coming from? In addition to this is connecting with myself, understanding that my needs change, what I need for my body changes over time, right? What feels good. I started to get so grossed out by food, like by animal product. I just got so grossed out, so grossed out. And I can't even explain it. It wasn't even necessarily like I love animals thing. It wasn't, I don't even know. I just felt like this gag reflex when I think about animal product. And, the journey into plant-based eating can be confusing. There's these like packs of people, it's like, how do you know someone's vegan? They'll tell you, right? That's the joke about CrossFit too. How do you know someone does CrossFit? They'll tell you. And it's no shame. Like, I get it. It's like exciting. And, there's a lot of passion, not let alone like an energetic vitality. But, people don't know like, well, if I'm eating vegetarian or vegan, where am I getting my protein? Well, from beans. Well, I used to do CrossFit. I'm not supposed to eat legumes. I'm paleo. I mean, there's just so much to keep up with. And so my point is, it's like instead of looking outside, look inside. I'm going to say that again. Instead of looking outside, look inside. What do you need? How do you feel after you eat certain things? If everything is energy and you can start tuning into what's on your plate when you feel full, right? There's a lot of information there. This idea of feeling full, part of the bulimia, right? You binge, you feel as full as you can. And I remember feeling like, oh my God, I need to feel full because I feel so empty. I felt soulless. I felt so empty. And the only thing that would give me this fulfilling feeling was being full with food, right? So I can now understand how this absence of connection and vitality to life was what was really affecting this desire to feel full with food. And then that would lead to the throwing up, right? And then would lead to the shame. It was like, what a perfect, for me, I was dealing with this shame loop, right? Like I felt that was an emotional home for me. I felt shame a ton. And what better way to feel more shame is to be throwing up. And then I feel more shame. And it was a cycle of shame. And, one of the big words that allows for the freedom in food is the healing, is the healing, is the embodiment. Wow, I'm alive right now in this body. There's nourishment that's available to me. There's breath that's available to me. Wow, I'm alive in my body. I'm beyond my body. Am I Linda? Is my body Linda? Am I Linda? Who am I? Contemplating some of these ideas and these questions. I will die one day. This physical form will no longer be here, right? Spirit lives beyond that. And that's something that, especially where your society that just is getting rich off of, anti-aging and longevity, which I understand, right? I think I'll live to 160 and I hope I look like I do right now then. But it's like this adulterated attempt to get into your mind, get into your marketing, and feel like something's wrong with me. I don't look how I'm supposed to look. The voices, right? The voices that are talking to you again and again and again. So noticing those voices. And I think this piece about our bodies and our aging bodies that will no longer be here at a certain point in time, right? It's like, God. And I've had some close death calls in my life, many actually. And I'm just like, geez Louise, like I'm here right now. Oh my gosh. How many seconds of my life and I'm in this one and this one and this one? Um, wow, right? So that shifts like an aging conversation to like, hell yeah, my face and body and everything's looking different. Like I'm alive and I'm aging. I think this identity piece, let's talk back to this athletics. It was athletic. It was a transition from high level athletics to like quote unquote human, normal human, whatever, amazing human, whatever you want to say. But that was a huge transition. And my body and my life experience was no longer supporting 25 to 30 hours of training. There wasn't that need. So in this transition, and where I can say today that I say every single day, healthy, wealthy, whole, healthy, wealthy, whole, healthy, wealthy, whole, right? Where there's this element of wholeness that was never available to me. It was all the parts of myself that I was rejecting. These are the types of thoughts and feelings that produce the freedom with food, right? There's an awareness. So I ask you right now, how would you like to feel with food? How would you like to feel about food? And when you notice yourself in anxiety, or you notice yourself in obsession, or you notice yourself in control, ask yourself, am I feeling how I want to feel with food? You got to take how old you are, right? Or excuse me, how old do you think you'll be? Think, say, like, most people on average are gonna be 86. Fine, we'll use 86. You're eating 3 times a day on average, or we'll make it 3.3 just for fun, times 365. Okay. Is 1 out of 109,000 meals in your lifetime, right? It's okay. That math problem, I'm a math nerd, really, really, really helps put perspective, right? In this moment, am I picking the most nourishing thing that's available to me? And nourishing is a dynamic definition. When I think of nourishing, it can be at a soul level, it can be at a cellular level. There's some times where cookie dough bites may be feeling the most nourishing for me, right? And it's just noticing, what need am I meeting through food? And are there other ways that I may need to meet my needs? Food is meeting a need. And it's just a matter of which one in which moment. So I hope you enjoyed this uh, dialogue around freedom with food. From the absolute deepest part of my heart, I am sharing this with you. I hope parts of my journey resonate, and many blessings for you. If you're like me, this soil awareness has led to a whole lot of other curiosities. So we could maybe have a part two to nerding out on soil. And this is just the beginning, right? If some of these concepts are new for you, this is just the beginning. This is the beginning of something new for you. So take whatever is resonant to you. The key is being able to tune in to yourself what you need. Certainly, there's healthier, quote unquote, options in each moment, but I think this more than anything comes to sourcing and shopping as local as possible, getting in with your local CSA, community shared agriculture, your local farm, understanding their farming practices. When you wake up to the power of soil, and get curious about how our food is being made, there are tremendous miracles available to you. I know that wholeheartedly. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Lila Life Show. Be sure to share, like, and comment. Tune in next week. And if you're not already a member of the Lila Life Collective, you'll want to be. So take a look in the show notes and be sure you sign up today. Have a beautiful day.